Hey everybody, it's Alex, the founder and CEO at Motoroso, and there they are, the Brembo BM6 Alien Fist brakes for the rear end of the C8 Corvette. Now, we made a video 6 months ago announcing these BM6 Alien Fist calipers for the C8 and just how awesome the tech is in these, but that they didn't make a rear system. About a week ago, we launched a video announcing that we co-developed the kit, and here it is. Here's the rear brake system for C8 Corvette. This video, just a quick how-to installation guide, and you'll also notice that we're swapping out the brake pads for the G-Loc brake pads, which we found will last a bit longer under extreme conditions at the racetrack. We're running the R8 compound there. Now, of course, you can buy these at Motoroso.com and get the best pricing on Brembo brakes you're going to find, and we're always here to answer your questions. So here's a quick how-to video. Let's go. We'll start by raising the car and placing it on jack stands, being careful to put them in the right location, and then remove the two rear wheels. Remove the two 15mm bolts securing the electric parking brake unit. Disconnect the wiring harness from the parking brake and set the parking brake aside. To protect from moisture, wrap the parking brake wiring connector in electrical tape. Route the parking brake wiring harness behind the suspension components and tuck it underneath the wheel well and secure it using zip ties. Prior to removing the caliper, free the brake line from the routing clip. Remove the two 19mm OEM caliper mounting bolts. Carefully lower the caliper and set it on something soft. Remove the OEM rotor set screw with a Torx bit and pull the rotor off. To remove the pads, remove the guide pins using a small tap and a hammer. As you'll see here, we're swapping out the FM1000 pads from the Brembo caliper to the G-Loc pads, but for now we're just pulling the pads out so that we can transfer over the brake lines, and then we'll put in our new G-Loc pads before we get rolling. Now, to swap the line, loosen the OEM Banjo bolt. Now, this has that annoying retained copper washer on it, and you're going to have to get this off. We did this by prying on it with a flathead screwdriver and then cutting it with a set of dikes and then using pliers to tear it off. Transfer the brake line over to the new caliper using the supplied Banjo bolt and the two copper washers on either side of the brake line. Snug this up, but don't fully torque it just yet in case it needs to move once the caliper is in place. Apply Loctite to the OEM caliper mounting bolts. First, mount the new Brembo bracket using those OEM bolts with a 19mm socket. Remove this stock heat shield that protects the lower control arm bushings. You can keep this by bending the trailing edge about 1 inch. This will make room for the caliper. Make sure you put this back on before you put your rotor on. Now set the new Brembo rotor in place and replace the rotor set screw. To get that sticker junk off there, we cleaned the rotor surface with a little bit of brake clean. Before reinstalling the caliper, put the new brake pads in place with the retention spring. Set your Brembo caliper in place and loosely place the new bolts. Tighten the bracket bolts and the caliper bolts down to the supplied torque specs. Check to make sure the brake line is in a good place and then fully torque this down to 20 Newton meters. That's 177 inch-pounds. Resecure your brake lines in the routing clips and you've finished installing on this side. Rinse, lather, repeat on the other, and you're good to go. All right, so we got the brakes installed yesterday. You just saw all the step-by-step of how to do that. But then we went home. It was a little too late to bleed. And then this morning we came in and we bled the brakes. Now, a couple things to know about bleeding the brakes on this car. This car has a very unique electronic brake booster. It is super duper important that you do not let air go out of that reservoir and into that booster, because if you do, you're going to have to take the car to Chevrolet and have them pressure bleed the entire system, and that does cost a little bit of money. We managed to bleed this pretty straightforward. We didn't lose that much fluid when we swapped it over. If you saw in the install video on the front, fluid went everywhere when we were trying to swap the lines over. On the rear, it was nowhere near as bad. We only lost a few drops of fluid out of the lines, but of course, this thing was full of air. So we had to pump all that through. We went through about 1 bottle just to make sure we got all the fluid through. So about 250 milliliters. And we just did your very typical slow brake pump hold, break the bleeder valve, and then tighten it up, and that worked beautifully, and the pedal feels really good now. We haven't driven it yet, but and if there is any problems with the brakes or we get a code, we will take it to Chevy and have it pressure bled just to be on the safe side. And if you feel better about doing that after you've got it bled well enough to take it to the dealership, not a bad idea. That's what we did on the front. Now you also saw that we swapped over to GPX 62 pads from G-Loc. So these G-Loc pads are going to be much better for the track application that we're running here. The FM1000 pads are good for some minor track days and some sport driving. But if you're going to be really pushing the car hard at the track like we have been, those pads are going to start to transfer material to the rotor. So we highly recommend looking at something like the R8 compound pad from G-Loc, and you can check those out on Motoroso. Now, of course, you also are going to need to finish the bedding in process no matter which pads you're running. The instruction manual is this big orange sheet in the Brembo box, and it's going to take you through about 25 different procedures that you need to do to fully bed in the brakes. You got to get these things hot and mated to one another so that they'll perform optimally, and once that's done, you're ready to rock and roll. If you're looking for these Brembo brakes, check them out at Motoroso.com. We've got the best price on Brembo brakes for this application. And if you want to know all the technical details on this and you haven't seen that video yet, check out our Brembo BM6 video right over here. We appreciate you watching. Thanks.